Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our lesson today, where we're going to go through quite a few verbs, common verbs from the Quran, and how they are put in a sentence, and how we use pronouns with each verb. Just a quick summary of what we've done in the last couple of days. So we've discussed all the kalimat, and we mentioned that kalimat is the plural for kalima. Obviously, you could also say kalam, which is quite similar to kalimat as well. There's not much difference, and kalimat can be divided into kalimat mabniya, which means the ending does not change, or kalimat mu'araba, which means these words change, or the ending change depending on where it is in the sentence. And then we moved on to discuss i'rab, and we said there's kalimat marfu'a, kalimat mansuba with a fatha, and kalimat majrura with a kasra. And then we discussed things that would make a kalima majrura, which means it potentially has a harf jar before it. And then we said examples for harf jar, the common ones are min wa ila, an wa ala, fi wal kaf wal ba wal lam. And then we also discussed the starts, or the beginning of every ayah, the transition words that are commonly used in the Quran, along with how to say no or don't, and its various forms in the Quran that often are used in the start of an ayah, along with huruf al-nida, where Allah calls on people, or when we call onto Allah in dua or for help, etc. And then we've discussed some nouns in a form of al-jumlatul ismiyya, and how to structure jumla ismiyya, although we are aware that this is not very common in the Quran. The simple jumla ismiyya is not very common, and it's often there's multiple things that are added to that sentence. Today we're going to go through some of the verbs, and I'll explain why or how the verb changes when used with different pronouns. And today, as you can see, I've put the common pronouns that are used in the Quran. You'll see that I've skipped some. So ana and nahnu are if me or a group of people are talking, and can also be used as a royal we. And then huwa, hiya, hum. I skipped out huma and hun because they're not as common in the Quran. I'm just trying to focus on the high yield content that will help you understand the Quran as quickly as possible. We can discuss them briefly, but I think we need to focus on these because it will help you quite significantly, especially when you're starting this journey of learning Quran, inshaAllah. So I've picked out about 10 verbs, and I'll try and go through them quickly, inshaAllah, and it will just give you an idea of how it's structured. And these verbs are quite similar to other verbs as well, so if you know these by heart, everything else will be much more easy, inshaAllah. So the first verb we've got today is, I'll put it in a box over here, abada. You should know that by now, because I think we've discussed it before last week, and we've mentioned abada, which means to worship. So abada with a fatha on every letter. So abada in that form with fatha on every letter is the past tense for huwa. And I'll leave that here for now, and I'll tell you why, and I'll come back later to it. But we'll start from the present tense. Present tense, ana has an alif at the start. So we'll always take that alif and we'll add it to the letters of our verb, and it will be a'bud. Nahnu has a noon at the start. So we'll add that noon to the verb, and it will be na'bud. We worship. Huwa, we add a ya. Again, I was trying to think of something clever now, but we just add a ya. And hiya, we add a ta. So huwa would be ya'bud. We'll just need to repeat it over and over until we understand it a wee bit better. Ya'bud. And hiya, we add a ta, so it becomes ta'bud. Hum, as we've mentioned before, we add a waw and noon. Ya'budun. Or ya'budu. So how come is it ya'budun or ya'budu? We remove the noon and add an alif, and it's a silent alif, only if there's certain things that come before the verb, like lan and la, for instance. So if it's negative, a negative verb, meaning that they do not worship, then in that instance I would remove the noon and I would put an alif as silent. It would be لن يعبدوا, they will not worship, or لم يعبدوا, they did not worship, or لا يعبدوا, they don't worship at the moment. And the past tense هو is very common, and that's why I've put it عبد in its original form. If I'm talking about myself, أنا عبدت, in the past it would be عبدت. I would add a ta at the end. عبدت. نحن عبدنا. Obviously, you won't find this commonly in the Quran. عبدنا. هي عبدت. هم عبدوا. So you'll notice that in the past tense, we don't add anything at the start. In the present tense, مضارع, we add letters at the start. أنا ألف, نحن نون, هو ياء, هي تاء, هم ياء, and I add a waw and noon at the end. For the madi or past tense, أنا عبدت, I just add a تاء. Similarly, for هي, I would add a تاء. نحن, I would add a noon and alif. عبدنا. And هو remains in its same tense, and I don't change or add anything to it. And if it's a plural, then it would be abadu, and I would skip the noon. I would put an alif, a silent alif, as I did if it was a negative verb in the present tense. Now for the command tense, I would skip ana and nahnu. It would make no sense to command myself. If I'm commanding another male, I would say أعبد, worship. For a female, it would be أعبدي. For a group of people, it would be أعبدوا. I know it's much to take in, but as soon as we repeat a few of these verbs, it will inshaAllah be a lot easier. But this is the structure. This is everything that we need to know from about all the verbs. There's a few exceptions. One of them I'll mention at the very end. But this is everything we need to know about a verb. If it's in the present tense, أنا أعبد. أنا أعبد. Just keep repeating after me. أنا أعبد. نحن نعبد. نحن نعبد. هو يعبد. هو يعبد. هي تعبد. هم يعبدون. Or يعبدوا, depending on where it is in the sentence. If it's in the past tense, أنا عبدت. عبدت. Plural, عبدنا. عبدنا. هو عبد. هي عبدت. هي عبدت. هم عبدوا. Again, if it's plural, it's always عبدوا. And for the أمر, أعبد, أعبدي, أعبدوا. أعبد, أعبدي, أعبد. Now we're going to try this again with a few more verbs. And the next verb we've got شهد. شهد. So this is our verb. Again, أنا this should be easy now. أنا أشهد. نحن نشهد. هو يشهد. هي تشهد. هم يشهدون. Or, yes, correct, يشهدوا. Now if it's in the past tense, we don't add anything at the start, we add something at the end. أنا شهدت. And شهدت means I witnessed. أنا شهدت. نحن شهد. What do I add for نحن? شهد, noon and alif. شهدنا. هو, in the same form it was originally. We don't change anything for هو. شهد. And here we add a ta similar to أنا. شهدت. But the difference here is the ta has a sukoon. For the amr tense, obviously أنا is not applicable. نحن is not applicable. هو اشهد. هي اشهد. Yes, اشهدي. And for a group of people, اشهدوا. That's it. Simple. أنا أشهد. نحن نشهد. هو يشهد. هي the ta تشهد. هم يشهدون or يشهدوا. And then for the past tense or madi, we don't add anything at the start. It's always shahada. We add something at the end. Shahadtu, shahadna for a group of people. Shahada, if it was just one person on his own. Shahadat, if it was a female. And for the command tense, we always add this alif at the start. Ishhad, ishhadi for female. And ishhadu if it's a group of people. And the next common verb is amala. Very common in the Quran. Ana, what do we add? Yes, alif. A'mal, a'mal. Nahnu, na'mal. Huwa, ya'mal. Hiya, ta'mal. She does. Amala, we've mentioned it before. Amala is to do. Ana amal, I do. Nahnu na'mal, we do. Huwa ya'mal, he does. Hiya ta'mal, she does. Hum ya'malun, correct. Ya'malun or ya'malun. If it's in the past tense, ana, I don't add anything at the start. I add something at the end. What do I add? A ta. Ana amaltu. Nahnu amalna. Huwa amala. Hiya amalat. And as we've mentioned, huwa, it's always in that same form as it was originally, amala. In the command tense, non-applicable, huwa i'amal. And if it's female, we add a ya at the end. Exactly. I'amali. Group of people, similar to previously, but we add an alif, always an alif at the start. I'amalu. I'amalu is probably Allah commanding us. We'll find that very often in the Quran. I'amalu. And the next verb is dhakara. Dhakara means to remember or to mention. Again, ana becomes adhkur. Adhkur. Nahnu nadhkur. Nadhkur. Huwa, yeah, you're correct. Nadhkur. Hiya starts with a ta. تذكر. هم يذكرون or يذكروا if there's any addition before it. If it's in the past tense, أنا, I don't add anything at the start, but I add something at the end. That's correct. ذكرت. نحن ذكرنا. هو ذكر in its original form. And here we add a ta again, but with a sukoon at the end. ذكرت. And hum ذكروا. Amr or command tense, non-applicable. Udhkur. Female, we add what at the end? Udhkur. For female, it's udhkuri. Group of people, udhkuru. Straightforward. We just need to repeat it over and over and over. That's the main thing. So we'll have one more regular verb and then we'll have an exception. And the reason why I've mentioned this exception is because it's very, very common. Although I'd much rather avoid mentioning this exception at the start in this stage when you're just learning. But I think it's very, very important and we see it very, very often in the Quran. And that's why I think we're better off just mentioning it here and now. And so the next one is sabara. We know that sabara means to be patient or to endure something. Ana, asbur. Ana, asbur. Nahnu, nasbur. Correct. Nasbur. Huwa, yasbur. Hiya, or ta. That's right. Tasbur. Hum yasburun or yasbiru. Past tense, we don't add anything at the start, we add something at the end. Ana sabartu. Nahnu sabarna. Huwa sabara in its original form. Sabara. Hiya sabarat, but with a sukoon instead of a dhamma for ana. And hum sabaru. Nothing at the start, we just add the waw and alif. Command, non-applicable. Huwa أصبر. If it's a female, it's أصبري. And plural, أصبروا. أصبروا. Do we have time for one more before the exception? صدقة. صدقة means to be honest. أنا أصدق. نحن starts with a noon, that's right. نصدق. هو يصدق. هي تصدق. هم يصدقون or يصدقوا. In the past tense, أنا, we don't add anything at the start, but we add a ta at the end. صدقت. صدقنا if it's plural. هو صدق in its original form. هو صدق. هو صدق. هي same, but we add a ta, that's right. صدقت and سكون. هم صدقوا. And the amr tense, we say اصدق. اصدق. هي اصدقي أو اصدقي. And هم اصدقوا. اصدقوا في القول. So these were the common verbs in the Quran. And now we're going to go to an exception that, again, it's very common, probably the most common verb in the Quran. And we'll see how things are slightly different. Again, same principles, but very, very slightly different. We just need to memorize this one. قال. And the exception here is that the alif changes slightly. Everything else is the same, but the alif can change, can become a waw or a ya, depending on where it is, if it's a noun or verb, and on several things. So we'll go through it and we'll see how that changes. Ana, again, we always start with the same. We always start with an alif. Ana for ana. Ana aqul. So we can see here that the alif already is changed to waw. Aqul. Nahnu, exactly the same, but with a noon at the start. So it would be naqul. Huwa, exactly the same, but with a yeah, that's right. Yaqul. What about here? We add a ta. Taqul. Hum, similar to huwa, but plural, so we add what at the end? The waw and noon. Yaqulun. So it's not that difficult, even though it's an exception. It's just that we've changed that alif to waw. In the past tense, it's ana qultu. So I've removed that alif or waw in its entirety. Qultu. Again, say after me. Qultu. Nahnu qul. Instead of the ta, we add an noon and alif. Is that right? Qulna. Huwa qala. In its original form, it's qala. Hiya, we add a ta, but we don't remove the alif anymore. Qalat. And hum qalu. And then for the command tense, we don't have this, we don't have that. Huwa, if it's singular, it's qul. And this is one of the most common things in the Quran. Qul. Because Allah is mentioning, is telling to Sayyidina Muhammad to say something to us. So it's always, this command or this verb always comes at the start of many, many verses. Qul. And if it's a female, quli. If I'm commanding a female to say something, then it's quli. And if it's a group of people, qulu. So just the only difference is that alif in the middle. It can sometimes change into a waw, or we can remove it in its entirety in the past tense. So as long as you repeat this, you can go back to this part of the video and repeat this exception maybe a couple of times. It will just help you memorize things a wee bit quicker. And that's it for today. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We've managed to go through some verbs. This is the main thing. I think the next time I'll try and see how we conjugate the verbs and put them together in a sentence. And after that, we'll go through some common phrases as well to help us learn a wee bit more what we've it was a heavy week, so hopefully inshaAllah we'll try and put things together so that we memorize things a wee bit quicker before our short quiz at the end of this week inshaAllah, and we'll take it from there inshaAllah. I'll try and put a PDF with some of these common verbs as well as some other ones as well, with the course material to help with memorizing things as well. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.